Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm continuing my reading and review of The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find links to all shows, social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show over at the website. And that includes Patreon and the merch store. And that website is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. Support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. Also, please check out the links in every episode description for friends of the show, including Jen, the Arcane Observer, and her channel, who is also the co-host of this show, and Michael Strange of the Trouble Minds Radio Show and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. There you can hear shows from myself and other amazing people 24/7 online. And so the nice thing about that is you don't have to pick any podcast or press play over and over again. You just start it and you go. So, as always with these reading shows, a few things I want to bring up. First of all, the views expressed in this reading are those of Charles Fort and may not exactly be my own or your own. So that's how that goes sometimes when you're reading a book. Also, please keep in mind that there may be some things that Fort at the time found to be mysterious that since the early 1900s have been figured out possibly by science. So there's a time difference there between when these books came out and the current day. Also, I will make mistakes pronouncing names of people and places because some are in other languages and words are hard to begin with. So I think that takes care of everything, so we can get started on this again. Almost went over time last episode. Hopefully I can avoid doing that this time. I did want to, actually, before I start reading, I wanted to comment, because I haven't done that much lately. I've mainly just been reading most of the material. Just keep in mind here as we go, all the different kinds of substances and materials that Fort has been writing about here. You have just biological matter. You have just plant matter, other organic matter. You have salt. You have coal. You have stones. In one case, I know he'll get into that more of that later too. I'm pretty sure anyway. And so these are all different things that fall in relatively small patches, small pieces of land, and sometimes in massive amounts, which is really fascinating because of all these details. Where the idea of a lot of people at the time was that there were whirlwinds and storms picking up all this matter, but Fort has pointed out before that even if that was the case, which he somewhat doubted, and I kind of am with him there, how is it that it was deposited with what seems to be accuracy and possibly intent on certain places? So anyway, just to point out there, these are all things that he's talked about so far in reading this book, and so I'll get back to this now. Also, I'm looking at the book here. Let's see here. Why did it minimize? I wanted it maximized. There we go. So we are on. Let me see. We have ways to go, but we're getting there. All right. Let's see. Let me find my spot again. Okay. Knowledge 4-134. That according to M. Debray, the substance that had fallen in the Argentine Republic, in quotation marks, resembled certain kinds of lignite and boghead coal, in quotation marks. In Comptus Rendus, 96-1764, it is said that this mass fell June 30th, 1880, in the province Entre Rios, Argentina, that it is like brown coal, that it resembles all the other carbonaceous masses that have fallen from the sky. Something that fell at Grezac, France, August 10th, 1885. When burned, it gave out a bituminous odor. Comtes Rendus 104-1771. Carbonaceous substance that fell at Rajpunta, India, January 22nd, 1911. Very friable. 30% of its soluble in water. Records of Geological Survey of India, 44 PT 1-41. Combustible carbonaceous substance that fell with sand at Naples, March 14th, 1818. American Journal of Science, 1-1-309. Scientific American Supplement, 29-11-798. That June 9th, 1889, a very friable substance of a deep greenish black fell at Migai, Mighei, Russia. It contained 5% organic matter, which, when powdered and digested in alcohol, wonderful, yielded, after evaporation, a bright yellow resin. In this mass was 2% of an unknown mineral. So that's unusual, unknown. Cinders and ashes and slag and coke, again, not the illegal kind or the soda pop, and charcoal and coal, and the things that sometimes deep sea fishes are bumped by. Reluctances and the disguises of or covered retreats of such words as like and resemble, or that conditions of intermediateness forbid abrupt transitions, but that the spirit animating all intermediateness is to achieve abrupt transitions, because if anything could finally break away from its origin and environment, that would be a real thing, something not merging away indistinguishably with the surrounding. So all attempts to be original, all attempt to invent something that is more than mere extension or modification of the preceding, there we go, is positivism. Or that if one could conceive of a device to catch flies positively different from or unrelated to all other devices, up he'd shoot to heaven. Or the positive absolute, leaving behind such an incandescent train that in one age it would be said that he had gone aloft in a fiery chariot, and in another age that he had been struck by lightning. I'm collecting notes upon persons supposed to have been struck by lightning. I think that high approximation to positivism has often been achieved. Instantaneous translation, residue of negativeness left behind, looking much like effects of a stroke of lightning. Someday I shall tell the story of the Mary Celeste properly, in quotation marks, as the Scientific American supplement would say. Mysterious disappearance of a sea captain, his family and crew. Of positivists by the route of abrupt transition, I think that Manet was notable, but that his approximation was held down by his intense relativity to the public, or that it is quite as impositive to flout and insult and defy as it is to crawl and placate. Of course, Manet began with continuity with Courbet, Courbet, I'm not sure, and others, and then between him and Manet, there were mutual indifferences. But the spirit of abrupt difference is the spirit of positivism. And Manet's stand was against the dictum that all lights and shades must merge away suavely into one another and prepare for one another. So a biologist like De Vries represents positivism, or the breaking of continuity, by trying to conceive of evolution by mutation against the dogma of indistinguishable gradations by, in quotation marks, minute variations, in quotation marks. A Copernicus conceives of heliocentricity. Continuity is against him. He is not permitted to break abruptly with the past. He is permitted to publish his work, but only as an interesting hypothesis. Continuity, and that all that we call evolution or progress, is attempt to break away from it. That our whole solar system was at one time attempt by planets to break away from a parental nexus and set up as individualities, and failing, move in quasi-regular orbits that are expressions of relations with the sun and with one another, all having surrendered, being now quasi-incorporated in a higher approximation to system. Intermediateness in its mineralogic aspect of positivism, or iron that strove to break away from sulfur and oxygen and be real, homogeneous iron, falling inasmuch as elemental iron exists only in textbook chemistry. Intermediateness in its biologic aspect of positivism, or the wild, fantastic, grotesque, monstrous things it conceived of, sometimes in a frenzy of effort to break away abruptly from all preceding types, but failing in the giraffe effort, for instance, or only caricaturing an antelope. All things break one relation only by the establishing of some other relation. all things cut an umbilical cord only to clutch a breast, a mother's breast, I guess I mean there. So the fight of the exclusionists to maintain the traditional or to prevent abrupt transition from the quasi-established, fighting so that here, more than a century after meteorites were included, no other notable inclusion has been made except that of cosmic dust, data of which Nordenskjöld made more nearly real than data in opposition. So Proctor, for instance, fought and expressed his feeling of the preposterous against Sir W. H. Thomson's notions of arrival upon this earth of organisms on meteorites, in quotation marks. I can only regard it as a jest, in quotation marks. In parentheses, knowledge 1-302, in parentheses. Or that there is nothing but jest, or something intermediate to jest and tragedy. That ours is not an existence, but an utterance. That Momus, M-O-M-U-S, is imagining us for the amusement of the gods, often with such success that some of us seem almost alive, like characters in something a novelist is writing, which often, to a considerable degree, take their affairs away from the novelist. That is very true. Anyway, that Mamas is imagining us and our arts and sciences and religions, and is narrating or picturing us as a satire upon the gods' real existence. Because with many of our data of coal that has fallen from the sky as accessible then as they are now, and with the scientific pronouncement that coal is fossil, how, in a real existence, by which we mean a consistent existence, or a state in which there is real intelligence, or a form of thinking that does not indistinguishably merge away with imbecility, could there have been such a row as that which was raised about 40 years ago over Dr. Hahn's announcement that he had found fossils in meteorites, accessible to anybody at that time. Philosophical Magazine 4-17-425. That the substance that fell at Kaba, Hungary, April 15th, 1857, contained organic matter analogous to fossil waxes, or limestone. Of the block of limestone, which was reported to have fallen at Middleburg, Florida, it is said, and parentheses, Science 11-118, close parentheses, that though something had been seen to fall, in quotation marks, in an old cultivated field, in quotation marks, the witnesses who ran to it picked up something that, in quotation marks, had been upon the ground in the first place, in quotation marks. The writer who tells us this, with the usual exclusion imagination known as stupidity, but unjustly because there is no real stupidity, thinks he can think of a good-sized stone that had for many years been in a cultivated field, but that had never been seen before, had never interfered with plowing, for instance. He is earnest and unjarred when he writes that this stone weighs 200 pounds. My own notion, founded upon my own experience in seeing, is that a block of stone weighing 500 pounds might be in one's parlor 20 years, virtually unseen, but not in an old cultivated field where it interfered with plowing. Not anywhere, if it interfered. Dr. Hahn said that he had found fossils in meteorites. There is a description of the corals, sponges, shells, and crinoids, all of them microscopic, which he photographed in Popular Science 20-83. Dr. Hahn was a well-known scientist. He was better known after that. Anybody may theorize upon other worlds and conditions upon them that are similar to our own conditions. If his notions be presented undisguisedly as fiction or only as an interesting hypothesis, he'll stir up no prude rages. But Dr. Hahn said definitely that he had found fossils in specified meteorites. Also, he published photographs of them. His book is in the New York Public Library. In the reproductions, every feature of some of the little shells is plainly marked. If they're not shells, neither are things under an oyster counter. The striations are very plain. One sees even the hinges where bivalves are joined. Professor Lawrence Smith, Knowledge 1-258. Dr. Hahn, in quotation marks, Dr. Hahn is a kind of half-insane man whose imagination has run away with him, in quotation marks. Conservation of continuity. Okay. Then Dr. Wineland examined Dr. Hahn's specimens. He gave his opinion that they are fossils and that they are not crystals of enstatite, as assured by Professor Smith, who had never seen them. And that's where we're going to end this episode. Just so much great stuff here. Again, limestone, massive block of limestone. Really amazing. Anyway, thank you all for being here, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.